Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're looking beyond the recent headlines to dissect the absolutely massive, multi-billion-dollar global fish market. I'm really glad you're joining me because we aren't just skimming the surface here. We're going to dive straight into the underlying economic currents, those unseen supply chain risks, and the immense opportunities that are completely reshaping this industry.
So let's kick things off with a highly plausible scenario. Imagine you're at your local grocery store, right? You're in Ohio, and you pick up a totally normal, legitimate-looking box of frozen breaded fish for dinner. But what if you found out later that that exact fish came from a country strictly banned from exporting that specific species to the US? I know, it sounds like a plot from some corporate thriller, but actually, it's a very real situation that just happened.
In this explainer, we'll uncover the macro trends and the invisible threats in this market. We're going to cover a high-stakes fish recall, the multi-billion-dollar market, the aquaculture price drop, fraud and geopolitical risks, and finally, securing the supply chain.
Let's start with part 1, a high-stakes fish recall, focusing on the Al-Kabir incident.
Recently, a high-alert USDA recall hit 8 U.S. states. It involved Al-Kabir branded breaded swai fillets and fish sticks that were illegally imported from the United Arab Emirates. Now, this right here shows exactly why we aren't just talking about a simple labeling typo. This was flagged as a Class 1 recall, literally the most serious kind, because the UAE actually isn't eligible to export siliformis fish, which includes catfish like swai, into the U.S. And because these specific packages didn't have that required USDA mark of inspection, the government basically had zero guarantees they were processed in a safe, sanitary way. It's a textbook example of a major breakdown in supply chain oversight.
But here's the thing. This local recall in places like Ohio and Michigan, it is just a symptom of a much, much larger systemic disease. Food fraud affects a staggering 21% of the entire fish sector. Just let that sink in for a second. That is a completely wild number. It's actually a higher rate of fraud than literally any other protein source on the market.
In the financial fallout from these incidents, it's immediate, and it is brutal. When a recall like this drops, sales for that specific brand plummet to near zero for almost a month. But the damage doesn't even stop there. Even similar, completely innocent brands see their sales take a hit for about a week, just because consumers get anxious. You know, in this business, trust is the ultimate currency, and once you lose it, buying it back is incredibly expensive.
Moving right along to part 2, the multi-billion-dollar market and its projected massive growth.
Let's zoom out and look at the sheer volume here. Current projections show this market expanding rapidly, jumping from an estimated $31.3 billion in 2026 to nearly $42 billion by 2030. That is being driven by a very healthy 7.4% growth rate. We're talking about an industry expanding at a truly incredible pace.
And if you're wondering where all this massive growth is happening, well, the Asia-Pacific region is absolutely dominating the expansion, holding about 44% of the global market share. Countries like China, Japan, and Thailand aren't just eating a lot of fish, they act as the primary processing hubs for the entire world.
Alongside this huge regional dominance, we're seeing some serious industry consolidation. Corporate heavyweights like Mowi, Thai Union, and Maruha Nichiro are pretty much dictating the pace right now. These massive companies are betting big on something they call the protein transition. Basically, that's the global consumer shift away from red meat and toward healthier and theoretically more sustainable whitefish.
All right, part 3, the aquaculture price drop. More supply, lower costs.
Now, what happens to the price of all this fish when global supply ramps up aggressively to meet that huge demand? Well, here's a super surprising development. Farmed fish production is getting so highly efficient that the OECD FAO actually expects the real prices for aquaculture to drop by 15% over the next decade, looking all the way out to 2035. And it's not just the farm stuff. We're also looking at a parallel 14% dip for wild-caught fisheries too.
So this dynamic creates a fascinating double-edged sword. On one hand, it's great for consumers, making fish way more accessible to the global masses. But on the other hand, it puts immense, crushing pressure on the producers. If you're a buyer, you're in a fantastic position to negotiate. But for the producers out there, extreme efficiency isn't just some nice goal to have anymore. It is literally the only way you're going to survive these shrinking profit margins.
This brings us to part 4, fraud and geopolitical risks, the invisible threats.
We definitely have to remember that financial growth does not automatically mean stability, which brings us to those invisible threats that can completely alter the landscape of the fish market overnight. The The fraud epidemic we mentioned earlier is a prime example of this instability. It's a massive global issue, perfectly illustrated by a recent scandal in Thailand, which, again, is one of the world's biggest processing hubs. A company over there was caught red-handed taking significantly cheaper tilapia, mislabeling it, and selling it at a huge markup as premium mackerel.
The really crucial takeaway here is that this kind of fraud is not just some victimless white-collar crime. It has severe real-world consequences. First up, safety. When you swap species, you're introducing dangerous biological unknowns, like totally unexpected allergens or toxins. Then there's the legal side. Importing the wrong species is highly illegal and will hit you with massive fines. And finally, the brand damage. As we saw, it instantly destroys consumer confidence, and that takes years to rebuild.
Aside from the fraud, geopolitics is the other major shock factor in this space. Trade flows here are heavily dictated by political relationships. Just look at Pakistan's tuna industry. When the broader US-Iran conflict heated up, it completely disrupted Pakistan's primary export market. The result of that? A devastating 90% decline in local boat-building orders. The fishermen simply couldn't sell their catch, so they just completely slammed the brakes on investing in new equipment.
And this highlights a really core truth of the industry. A single diplomatic rift, a new tariff, or a sudden sanction can instantly turn a highly lucrative export market into an absolute dead end overnight. The reality is, you just cannot separate the business of seafood from global politics.
Finally, Part 5, Securing the Supply Chain and Navigating the Future.
So, since we are clearly operating in this booming market that's simultaneously challenged by a severe lack of transparency and constant geopolitical shifts, how exactly do you adapt your strategy to survive and thrive? Well, the bottom line is, whether you're a buyer, a supplier, or an investor, your strategy has to evolve right now. First, you absolutely must implement strict traceability. You need to know the exact journey of your fish, literally from the hook to the plate. Second, diversification. Do not rely heavily on just one region or one single species, because as we've seen, geopolitical winds shift way too quickly. And third, relentless due diligence. You have to scrutinize the country of origin and ensure they are actually approved exporters for the specific species you are buying.
Ultimately, the future of the seafood industry belongs to those who can guarantee safety, sustainability, and above all else, transparency. So I'll leave you with one final, crucial question to consider the next time you're browsing that frozen aisle. Do you really know what's on your plate? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning your supply chains, stay focused on those details, and we will see you next time.